At its height, Lakewood Church transformed a 16,000-seat Houston arena into America's most spectacular megachurch. Crowds rivaled sports tournaments. A $95 million reinvention turned a former sports arena into a stadium-sized worship experience, and Joel Osteen became the public face of that expansion. But beneath the surface, even unstoppable empires have hidden limits. Why are so many Christians questioning the motivational promise? To understand how arena worship became vulnerable and what went wrong when trust was tested, you have to see what was deliberately built from the start. A megachurch is not just a big congregation. It is a phenomenon with a definition and a blueprint. According to the Hartford Institute for Religion Research, a Protestant church qualifies as a megachurch when it draws at least 2,000 people to weekly worship. By 2020, the United States counted about 1,750 of these massive congregations, a figure that would have been unthinkable just a few decades earlier. These are not simply larger versions of traditional churches. The model is built around the idea of church as experience. Large auditorium-style worship centers, professional bands, and production teams working behind the scenes to create an environment that feels more like a concert or a major event than a traditional service. The rise of the megachurch owes much to early pioneers who saw the potential of mass media and positive messaging. In the 1950s, Robert Schuller started preaching to drive-in movie crowds in Orange County. He moved on to build the Crystal Cathedral, a glass and steel landmark that became famous through the Hour of Power television broadcast. Schuller's sermons focused on possibility thinking, optimism, self-esteem, and practical life advice, delivered through the lens of faith. The message was clear and inviting, and the medium was designed for the widest possible reach. This approach set the stage for a new era. Churches began swapping pews for padded seats, sanctuaries for multi-building campuses, and hymnals for giant screens. The focus shifted from a single pulpit to a team of musicians, lighting designers, and volunteer coordinators. Childcare, coffee bars, and bookshops became standard features, all designed to make attendance convenient and appealing to modern families. Congregants became more like an audience, and Sunday morning turned into a carefully crafted experience. By the time Lakewood moved into a former NBA arena, this model was already established across the country. The numbers tell the story. Millions of Americans gather each week in megachurches, drawn by energy, spectacle, and the promise of something bigger than themselves. This is the world in which Lakewood thrived, not as an outlier, but as a prime example of a church built for scale, production, and the customer's satisfaction. In 1999, Lakewood Church made a defining choice. Joel Osteen, who had spent years behind the scenes producing his father's television broadcasts, stepped into the pulpit after John Osteen's sudden death. He was not a seasoned preacher or a theologian by training. He was a media producer with an instinct for what played well on camera. Within months, the church board confirmed him as senior pastor. Membership doubled in a single year, surging from about 11,000 to 22,000. The message shifted, too. Osteen's sermons traded fire and brimstone for optimism, self-improvement, and the promise of God's favor. Words like sin and repentance faded, replaced by stories of destiny, breakthrough, and living your best life now. Meanwhile, the wider megachurch world was wrestling with uncomfortable data. At Willow Creek Community Church, leaders commissioned the Reveal Study, a sweeping multi-year survey of thousands of their own members. The results landed with a jolt. Higher attendance and deeper involvement in church programs did not reliably produce spiritual growth. Many participants described themselves as consumers of religious goods and services, rather than growing disciples. Bill Hybels, Willow Creek's founder, called it the wake-up call of my adult life. The data was clear. Activity did not equal maturity. But for churches already investing millions in buildings, media, and staff, reversing course was almost unthinkable. Lakewood, under Osteen, leaned into the brand. In 2003, the church signed a long-term lease on Houston's former Compaq Center, a cavernous sports arena that once hosted NBA championships. Over the next 2 years, Lakewood poured roughly $95 million into renovations, transforming the space into a worship venue with a capacity of 16,000 seats. Concert lighting, huge video screens, and state-of-the-art broadcast facilities. The result was both audacious and deliberate. The church was designed from the ground up to deliver a spectacle. Every Sunday became an event, with Osteen at the center. His message beamed out to millions. This was not an accidental evolution. It was a strategic pivot that prioritized scale, production, and emotional impact. The investment paid off in numbers, but it also built a model that depended on keeping the crowd inspired and coming back. For a time, it seemed unbreakable, but the decision to build a church around experience rather than formation set the stage for the tests that would follow. Hurricane Harvey swept into Houston in late August 2017, flooding entire neighborhoods and forcing thousands from their homes. As the city scrambled to find shelter space, attention turned to Lakewood Church, a massive arena on higher ground, capable of housing thousands. Online, photos and posts began circulating accusing Lakewood and Joel Osteen of keeping their doors closed while families slept in shelters or on cots at the convention center. The criticism spread fast, amplified by viral tweets and news headlines questioning why one of America's largest churches was not opening its doors. Lakewood responded with statements that parts of the building and surrounding roads were flooded, and that safety was a real concern. On Sunday morning, August 27th, the church posted on Facebook that it was inaccessible due to severe flooding, and it directed people to other shelters. Supporters pointed to photos of water in lower levels and to the need for coordination with city officials. Critics, meanwhile, shared videos showing dry entrances and accused the church of hiding behind logistics. By Monday, the backlash had reached national news. Joel Osteen gave interviews defending the timeline, saying the church was never closed and that it would open as soon as it was safe and requested by the city. On Tuesday morning, Lakewood announced it was receiving evacuees. Within hours, volunteers filled the concourse with cots and supplies, and the arena became a shelter and distribution hub. For many, though, the damage had already been done. The initial perception, whether fair or not, was that Lakewood hesitated when the city needed help the most. Supporters argued the criticism ignored real safety and coordination issues. Detractors saw a gap between the church's public message of hope and its actions in a crisis. The Harvey episode became a lasting reference point. Former members and critics cited it as a moment when trust in the church's moral leadership began to crack. That perception, once lodged, continued to shape how people remembered Lakewood long after the cots were cleared and the lights came back on. March 2020 arrived with an abrupt silence. For the first time in decades, the doors to Lakewood's arena stayed shut on Sunday mornings. Across the country, church after church moved services online. The familiar routines, parking lots filling up, ushers at the doors, the pulse of the crowd vanished overnight. At first, the live streams felt like a temporary fix, but as weeks turned into months, the absence became its own presence. National surveys captured the shift in real time. The Survey Center on American Life reported that the share of Americans who never attend religious services jumped from 1 in 4 before COVID to 1 in 3 by spring 2022. The most committed weekly attenders hardly changed, but people who were already loosely connected simply stopped coming back. The habit broke, and for many, it never returned. For some, like the composite attendee Jennifer Martinez, the change was personal and unsettling. She had spent years in the arena, drawn by the music, the crowd, the sense of belonging. Watching from home, the energy was gone. The message, once uplifting in a sea of thousands, now felt repetitive and thin. Without the weekly ritual, she found herself drifting, searching for something deeper than a motivational boost on a screen. The pandemic did not invent disengagement, but it made visible just how fragile the connection could be. When the show was paused, the experience that once felt unstoppable revealed its cracks. For many, the ritual was not just part of faith, it was the glue holding it together. Today, fewer Americans enter megachurch doors, and more question what is left when spectacle fades. The numbers keep shifting, but the need for depth endures. Faith built on feeling alone cannot weather every storm. The real test is still ahead. What do you think? Share your perspective below.